Start recorder. Start recording. Hello, Internet, and welcome back to the story Nook. Today we're going to be reading a story from r/entitled parents. This is an old one from 3 years ago, and it was posted by user amateur artist Jen. I came across this story because another Reddit channel on YouTube was reading it, and I listen to other people read Reddit stories while I sit and do my very, very boring desk job of setting up devices. And they began reading this one, but they stopped reading it, like, not even halfway, and it was so frustrating for me. So, I decided I'm going to read the whole thing all in one video. So, welcome in, come in, grab your water, your juice, your coffee. I am recording this from within my car. It is raining, so you might pick up some of the rain outside. And for that, I say c'est la vie. I don't make any money right now, so can't afford to just do this full time. Wish I could, sadly cannot. And our title today is My Dear Entitled Auntie Ruins My Graduation and Nearly Destroys My Relationship with My Parents. Super stupid long. Grammar, spelling, and formatting on mobile. Forgiveness, I'm human. This all happened several years ago, blah, blah, blah. Seriously, y'all are on Reddit, so you know the drill. While this post could probably be broken up into multiple parts, I'm only using it as a bit of therapy so you get the whole proverbial cake all at once rather than going at it piece by piece. And that is cool with me, OP, thank you. Once it's written out, I'm hoping that I won't have to think about the specifics for a very long time. Plus, I'm a little shy about sharing, so that's another reason why this has to be all in one go or not at all. I hope this is the correct place to post the story. If not, your advice is more than welcome. Warning, this turned out a lot longer than I originally intended. The details run long, but for me, it's necessary. I'm also a wordy writer. Oh, there is not too much dialogue either besides what I distinctly remember. I don't see the point of embellishing an already crazy story. I probably won't remember to put a TLDR at the end either, so just refer to the title, lol. Sorry about that. Grab a beverage and a snack and strap in for the roller coaster ride. Oh, don't worry, OP, I already have. I got my water. Sadly, no snacks in this car. Wish I had packed some. I would have eaten them all at lunch, though. Y'all have no idea. My lunch was like fucking dino nuggies that were baked last night. Because I just struggle with the whole packing lunch for work thing. But my husband's always complaining about how hungry he is. So we gotta bring something, otherwise it is Burger King or Wendy's. It's very not healthy. We need to eat healthier. Flashback to the year 2000X. June. A beautiful day, sunny, slightly below average temperature for the time of year. A nice breeze that kept us all cool while we were all crammed together on the school's football field. Perfect conditions for my high school's commencement exercises, aka graduation. The family members were seated, the music started. We high school seniors began the march to our seats. We sat, speeches, applause, corny dad jokes from our principal. Then the important part, the diplomas. I honestly have no idea where the fuck my diploma is. No one's ever asked to see it. So I'm just like, I know I have it, don't know where it is. We were called up one by one in alphabetical order. My maiden name began with a B, so my turn to walk the stage and receive my diploma came relatively quickly. Applause, most likely only from my parents and aunts, and maybe a few claps from the families of a few of my friends. My family had moved, so I had actually transferred into the school nearly in the middle of my senior year, and didn't have much of an established presence. I returned to my seat and happily watched my friends and classmates have their own moments. Sometime later, the final student's name was called. We turned our tassels, another speech from the principal admonishing us to remember that we were now, excuse me, that was a burp hiccup, that we were now adults and needed to act responsibly. Wished us the best of luck in our futures. I'm assuming that was the gist of his final speech. Totally didn't pay attention, typical teenage attitude, yada yada yada. Finally, we were officially dismissed for our last time. We all cheers, caps were tossed. It was an amazing moment, totally like what you see on young adult television shows and tween movies. After getting hugs and congratulations from my best friend's parents, I excused myself and went to go look for my parents and aunt. I looked all over the field, in the parking lot, and everywhere in between. No beaming mother. No proud father. No aunt to smile and be happy for me. They were gone. Overly long backstory. My aunt was, and still is, unfortunately, totally entitled and oblivious of how the world really works to boot. Growing up, I remember hearing bits and pieces of her interesting life. She had been married and subsequently divorced several times by this point. She had no concept of personal discipline or financial prudence, so she had several creditors after her. She always had something wrong with her or her life. No one understood how she was what she was going through. She needed help. The world hated her and people were out to get her. Nothing was ever her fault. It was always someone or something else. She has 2 children with 2 different men and thinks that they can do no wrong, despite them both eventually serving multiple stints in jail and drug rehab programs. To make a stupidly long story just a tiny bit shorter, she was an entitled dingbat. I love her because she was family, but I can't stand her now. Seriously, if she was on fire, I probably wouldn't waste my spit on her. About 6 months prior to my graduation, and nearly as soon as they had unpacked from our move, she ended up moving into our house. It was just her, as her kids were both with their fathers at this point, and literally the only thing my parents asked as compensation was that she take care of some basic house chores. Dishes, vacuuming, cleaning the bathrooms, etc. Honestly, I don't remember why she had moved in with us, but it was probably a financial issue of some sort, as she never did have 2 pennies to rub together, and probably got evicted. She was currently between husbands at this time, by the way. I could be wrong, and she might have had a more legitimate reason, but I was only 17. 18 by graduation, so more or less oblivious to everything. The first couple of weeks were really fun. We would stay up on the weekends together and watch old Alfred Hitchcock and the Twilight Zone shows and movies. She even taught me how to make homemade flour tortillas and real guacamole. In the beginning, she was like a big kid, almost like a sister. As an only child, this was a new concept to me. Then it all began to fall apart. One day she didn't feel well. Her back hurt. Her hands hurt. A million ailments. It was always something, and she obviously enjoyed the limelight. She couldn't vacuum because her back hurt too badly. She couldn't wash the dinner dishes because she was sure she had arthritis in her hands. She had looked up her symptoms online, so she knew what was wrong with herself. Seriously, guys, we need to petition the world's governments to pass a law that people like my aunt cannot visit medical diagnosis websites. Anyway, it wasn't that she didn't want to help out around the house, which was my parents' only stipulation of her staying with us rent-free. It was just that she was sick and her arthritis was acting up and couldn't. Right. So all the chores my folks asked her to take care of in lieu of rent became my job. Vacuuming, cleaning bathrooms, dusting dishes, laundry, cooking dinner, etc. Every day. On top of schoolwork and homework, maybe that's why those 6 months were cloudy and fuzzy. Lack of sleep. Over the weeks and months, she had more and more doctor's appointments, and apparently she found one willing to indulge her fantasy of ill health in order to get a bigger paycheck for himself. She had more and more restrictions as to what she could or couldn't do in regards to how much time standing or a maximum weight she could lift. Her doctor began prescribing her crazy amounts of pills to take for the pain and her anxiety and God only knows what else. On top of her issues, she began calling herself disabled and began demanding that we three, Mom, Dad, and me, do things for her, and that she was perfectly capable of doing just a couple of days. Hold on. That she was perfectly capable of doing just a couple of days or weeks before. She needed help making her bed, making her breakfast, etc. She had no job. She would sleep until a crazy late hour in the afternoon, come downstairs to the main family television, demand to watch her shows, do practically nothing the rest of the day besides watch TV and eat. She never seemed to have trouble waddling without struggle or pain, I might add, between the fridge in the kitchen and the living room couch, balancing snacks and sodas, then be back in bed by 9 p.m. or so. Of course, demanding silence as she needed to rest to feel better. She had no hobbies, no friends, no household contributions, no discipline, no motivation. My home life was now playing out exactly like my own ridiculously tacky soap opera starring Cinderella or something, because there was always some kind of drama. My aunt having XYZ problems, my parents exasperated, but never standing up for themselves in their own home, and me playing the role of some kind of servant and whipping boy/girl. My folks began catering to Auntie's every demand in order to, in their own minds, keep the peace. All my aunt's chores fell to me to complete, on top of school and homework. If I ever spoke up about it, all I was told to quit being a selfish brat. I needed to grow up, recognize that Auntie was sick, life's not fair, and I needed to pitch in and be a contributing member of the family, blah, blah, blah. I had zero free time between school, catching up on graduation requirements, household chores, cooking dinner, and taking care of/waiting on my aunt. Even weekends were spent with chores and homework. Eventually, my dear auntie's corrupt doctor prescribed a wheelchair for her day-to-day activities. Apparently, he thought that her back issues had developed into a serious problem, and her doctor thought that it was in her best interest to not have her walking around much. By this point, I knew her doctor was a quack and shady as heck, but I figured he was still a doctor and an adult, so no need to press for a second opinion. Being young, I naively believed that surely he knew what he was doing. Yeah, he did. He wanted a paycheck. Yay! So yeah, a wheelchair. It was a ridiculous and clunky thing. She could barely navigate it around the main floor of our house, though never had an issue climbing the stairs to her bedroom. She insisted on taking it wherever we went, and she also coerced my parents into trading in one of their cars for an SUV in order to fit the four of us and her chair. Most embarrassing was when my mom, auntie, and I would go to the grocery store. In lieu of her own wheelchair, she would always grab one of the store's electric ones. She would often forget her disability in order to walk quickly and grab something she forgot, and I can't even begin to count the dirty looks we got. It was obvious that she had no physical issues, and all she did was take a chair from someone who might have truly needed it. Aunt and I didn't spend much time together anymore by this point because, one, I had my end-of-year finals and other schoolwork prior to my graduation. Two, I literally had no free time due to all the extra chores. And three, I just couldn't stand being around her anymore. This woman was, well, I can't think of a categorization for her, as it would be an insult to the fellow people, items, things classified as such. Even to call her a Karen would be an insult to other Karens. Seriously, nothing was wrong with her physically. I had spied at her several businesses when she was out on her own and such, walking around, even carrying the store's hand baskets with the things needed, Walking fine, no wheelchair in sight. She might have mental issues. Looking back, I have strong theories. But there was definitely nothing wrong in regards to her body or bodily functions. Her back and legs might hurt, but if she would get some exercise and lose a few pounds, she'd most likely be relieved of those pains. If she would get off the copious number of bogus prescriptions, she would not feel tired, weak, or fuzzy all the time. And Red Bull and other caffeinated or alcoholic beverages are no good for anyone, yet she seemed to be going through several of each daily based on the number of empty cans and bottles I found in her room later. She just used her shady doctor to continue her poor me persona, and she liked the attention. So yeah, the weeks passed and now my high school graduation was looming. My parents were, at that point, over the moon at my coming commencement exercises and advancement into the grown-up world. They were so proud because I worked my butt off to keep my grades high and also fulfill the graduation requirements of my new school. The state had a specific requirement that high school seniors completed and receive a passing grade on a portfolio of a number of written pieces. This portfolio is normally worked on over all 4 years of high school. So yeah, as I had transferred halfway through the school year, I had something like 6 months to finish and pass what my peers had close to 4 years to complete. All was generally good in my world outside of the house. Inside the house was different as there was a lot of tension building. My aunt was pretty quiet in a week or so before the ceremony. She went around with a rather sour expression on her face that only got worse when a package from my grandparents, her and my mom's parents, arrived. She had sent me a very nice check, a beautiful monogrammed Bible, and a 24-karat gold necklace with a diamond solitaire pendant as a graduation gift. All the graduating grandkids in our family received something similar from them, so the boys in the family received a gold watch rather than a necklace. Other cards and gifts, notes, and letters came from other family members and close family friends, and it was all displayed in the living room on a console table by the stairs. The day comes. Yay, graduation. It was such a happy day. My mom did my hair in a beautiful braid, and I had a new dress and shoes that I bought and paid for myself. As a finishing touch, I accessorized with my beautiful new necklace from my grandparents. When I come downstairs, my dad seemed choked up and gave me a big hug, calling me a beautiful young lady. My aunt didn't say a word and only glared at my neck as she sat impatiently in her wheelchair. When she wheeled herself around to head to the SUV in the garage, she accidentally ran into the side table where my graduation cards were placed. Knocking almost everything onto the floor, she made some sort of half-hearted apology and commented about how our house was so small. I was determined that she wouldn't bring my day down, so I tried to ignore her mood as best I could. I simply picked everything back up and arranged everything neatly back on the table. I rode to the school with my parents and aunt, with her wheelchair, of course. They dropped me off at the front entrance because I had to be there early for preparations and such, and the three of them decided to run to a nearby store for a few drinks and to kill a bit of time before the ceremony started. I had to be there 2 hours early. My aunt was still in a sour mood and complained that she was hot. Note the beautiful weather conditions of the day above, and thirsty. Her back was hurting already. She needed to take her pills now. My dad sighed and told me that he promised they would get back quickly, saying they'd return long before the scheduled start time, and they'd find me and let me know when they get back. I waved them off and I headed inside my school to take care of my graduation stuff. Fast forward about 2 hours. We students were grown up and sported the typical half cardboard, half ribbon and glue caps on our heads. It was time for everything to start, and I hadn't seen my folks arrive back yet. I figured it was no big deal. The place was pretty packed. It was the early 2000s, so no plague doctors or social distancing that we endure today, lol. They probably couldn't get through to let me know where they were. We lined up and the ceremony started. Music, marching, speeches, blah, blah, blah. My name was called. I heard the cheering and looked into the crowd to see that my family was indeed there, as they promised. I flashed the obligatory smiles for the school's pictures, and then walked off the stage and filed back to my seat. I spent the rest of the ceremony happily cheering for my friends and simply basked in the sunshine and happiness of today. After we turned our tassels, were dismissed, and finally released to go meet our loved ones, I was accosted by my friends and their families. My best friend's family hugged me, and we were all congratulating each other. Excusing myself, I began to look around for my own family. They're nowhere to be seen. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find any of them. My happy little bubble burst. The happy day suddenly disappeared, and I was left with a sick feeling in my chest. Not only were my parents and aunt not there, but I had no way to get home. There was no way I could have walked home, as we lived miles away in suburbia. Plus heels. Girls, I know y'all understand. All I could do was just stand there in the rapidly emptying parking lot, alone and crying, wearing my graduation gown with my diploma and cap in hand. Now that you've gotten the novel Link backstory, let's return to the event at hand. After the ceremony, my best friend's mom saw me standing by myself as they were all walking to the parking lot to go home. She walked over to me asking if everything was okay and where my parents were. She said she wanted to meet my parents so they could all congratulate themselves on raising two more amazing young women for society. Typical happy parents feelings, I guess. That's when I finally looked up to her and she saw my tears. After some mumbled conversation between us, can't remember what I said exactly, but more or less that I was stranded, she frowned and said that they would take me home. All this happened before cell phones were a common thing, so there was no way to easily contact anyone else, and this was my best and only, if we're being honest, option. I got into their van and my best friend saw my face. She had been witness to a lot of stuff in regards to my parents and entitled aunt over the past months, and all she could do was squeeze my hand in sympathy. She was holding a beautiful bouquet of roses and baby's breath that she had received from her parents, and seemed slightly embarrassed that my parents hadn't done the same. I only smiled and said that they were gorgeous, and I was happy for her. The ride to my house was pretty quiet, with only a little tense conversation. My best friend's dad was very quiet and drove with a grim expression on his face. I remember seeing him look in the rearview mirror at me once, and he just seemed concerned for me and a little confused about the behavior of my family. We finally arrived at my home, and sure enough, my parents' SUV was indeed there in the driveway. Best friend's mom turned around in her seat and said that she wanted to walk me to the door and make sure all was all right with my folks and aunt. AKA probably confront them and chew them out for stranding me like that on my graduation day. They're all Hispanic and have absolutely zero mouth filters. I love them to death. I said no and that I would be okay. She squeezed my hand, and after thanking them for the ride, I stepped out of their van. My best friend leaned out of the van door before I was able to slide it closed and handed me a rose from her own bouquet. She made me promise to call her if I needed her. This girl was, and still is, the best and dearest friend I have ever had, and I love her like a sister. Bestie, if you ever see this, thanks a bunch for everything. Love ya. As soon as I stepped into the house, I could feel that the tension in the air was thicker than a London fog. My aunt was laying on the couch in the living room, presumably to rest her aching back, watching TV with a large fast food bag and empty wrappers and plates scattered around on the coffee table nearby. Mom was in the kitchen, and Dad was probably upstairs in his office. Aunt looked up and coldly demanded to know where I had been. Smirking, she says that her kids would never do something so inconsiderate. My parents were worried. They all thought that I would have been home long ago. She said I was so rude and inconsiderate, and said that I had thought that I was above everyone else in the world because I had received a little piece of paper. Dad heard me come in and came downstairs, slurping on a fast food drink. He irritably asked me where I had been, what I was doing all this time, why I took so long to get home. Mom came in as well from the kitchen and wanted to know where I was and yelled at me that they were worried. Apparently, it was my fault for not knowing that they had to leave, and my fault I didn't arrange a ride home. It was my fault that I expected them to stay, etc., etc., etc. The language was much more colorful than what I wrote above, but I preferred to keep things relatively clean. All I could do was stand there in the living room, totally dumbfounded. At this point, it was a little over 3 hours since the ceremony began. Almost 2 hours since my name was called, and about 40 minutes since the ceremony ended. I asked how they managed to get and eat apparently fast food in just a few minutes since the ceremony ended. My dad suddenly looked sheepish and said that they had left right after my name was called. My aunt smirked and said, "That's right, I was hot and my back hurt. You know I have to take my pain pills. Plus, we were hungry and wanted to get dinner. We even got you your favorite. Yours is in the kitchen." I stared at her blankly for several seconds before my mom told me to wipe the attitude off my face and go eat. Following me into the kitchen, she started talking about how they knew I'd get a ride home from somebody. I'd be okay. They weren't really worried, but I should have come home sooner and not stayed to play around after the ceremony. I spotted the fast food bag on the counter, and when I opened it, I saw my burger and already picked out fries. I hate junk food like that. Certainly not my favorite. They normally would have remembered. Regardless, everything was ice cold and unappetizing. They'd obviously been home for quite a while. I looked over towards the kitchen table. I was surprised to see a large sheet cake, beautifully decorated with roses, other decorative icings, and the words, "Congratulations, graduates. Cousin's name," in big letters. And my name. It was beneath my cousin's name in a smaller font, and it looked to be an afterthought and squished in to fit. Even the color of the icing used to write my name was different. Big pieces of the cake had already been cut out of it. I couldn't understand why a cake for my graduation day had my cousins on it as well. She didn't attend my school and wasn't even anywhere nearby, as she was living with her dad several states away. Not to mention that she hadn't even graduated yet. Side note, my aunt's daughter is the same age as I am and was supposed to have the same graduation year. But she was unable to graduate on time due to poor grades and behavioral problems. She had to take makeup evening classes that coming summer and fall, and her diploma would eventually reflect the next graduation year. My relation with her is a whole other can of worms. I have a senior prom story involving her that y'all might enjoy, and I would love to read, and I'm hoping that you will read it. While I stared at my cake, my mom quickly said that my auntie had ordered it, and it was a surprise. Wasn't that nice of her? If I had been home earlier, I could have cut it myself, but they all wanted dessert. But they all wanted dessert after the burger, so my aunt did the honors for me. Something in me finally snapped, and I was done. I turned around and asked my mom point blank, why did they leave so early? Why couldn't they stay for the whole ceremony? Why had they stranded me there without warning? Why they didn't find some way to get a word to me that they needed to leave early? And admittedly petty, why couldn't I get my own darn cake without having to share it with a person who wasn't even graduating that year? She began to unleash a laundry list of my faults. She told me that I was just acting superior because I graduated. I needed to check my attitude. I was rude. I was ungrateful. I was acting like I was better than everyone else. She then said I was rubbing it in my aunt's face that I graduated on time and my cousin did not. I needed to consider the struggles, health, and physical limitations of others. Also, I would never amount to anything, as I was too dumb to go to college, so I should get used to serving others better than myself. About the college thing, that's another story I can share if asked. On and on. Like a rude-ass fucking mom, the fuck? I was stunned. I had no idea what the heck changed between the morning and now. To this day, the only reason I can think of for all of this was that my aunt didn't like the attention I was getting from my parents and the rest of our family. She probably felt slighted because her daughter hadn't gotten a check, necklace, or a Bible from our grandparents yet. Duh! When she called them to wine, my no-nonsense grandma straight up told her no diploma, no graduation gifts, and said that my cousin would get her gift next year if she was able to pass. She was offended that so much attention had been lavished on me and my accomplishments, graduating with honors despite transferring mid-year, rather than her own daughter or her own life-changing health issues. She didn't like the fact that I was in the limelight and not herself. Most likely she started whining and complaining to my parents about my so-called superior and stuck-up attitude as soon as they dropped me off before the ceremony. Then whined and complained that she was in pain and needed to go home as soon as possible to take her dang pills and rest. Eventually she filled their ears with enough poison, so they left. So that morning, apparently, everything was fine. But now it wasn't. 24 hours before I was behaving normally, and now I had apparently been acting stuck up. Regardless of all that crap, how was it okay that they left their teenage daughter stranded? Without knowing how she would be getting home. How could they leave me on such an important and happy day? How could they not even tell me? How could they allow my aunt to whine and complain and then just go along with what she wanted instead of considering my feelings? Did they just not see how badly their actions that day hurt me? How could a parent-child relationship be ruined in the space of a single afternoon? Suddenly I realized that this hadn't happened only in a few hours, or even a few days. Our relationship had been deteriorating for months. I found out later that ever since my aunt had come to live with us, she had been talking to my parents about imagined insults to her. My perceived superiority, my rudeness, my unwillingness to help out, and my all-around bad attitude. She accused me of sneaking boys into my room when my parents were there. She told them that I had confided to her that I hated my parents and their overly strict ways. She said that she saw me smoking cigarettes at my bus stop before school. As she is so disabled, I have no idea how she managed to walk or roll so far to spy on me. For the record, her accusations were all completely false. My parents were strict, yes, but usually fair-ish, and I had assumed loving and supportive of me. I also can't stand cigarette smoke, and at this point I was as pure and physically intact as the day I was born. Blush. Anyway, between her own entitlement and jealousy, she realized that I was doing better than her own kids and herself, and she decided to make my life miserable. At this point, I wasn't even angry. I was just really, really sad. I felt the cold food in the bag on the kitchen counter and my cake on the table and went upstairs. I left the cold food in the bag on the kitchen counter and my cake on the table and went upstairs to my bedroom with my diploma and rose. When I got there, I shut the door. When I turned around, I saw a devastating sight. My monogram Bible on the floor on top of a baking sheet. Half the pages torn out and the remaining pages and covered burnt black. The uncashed check from my grandparents torn into tiny pieces and scattered like confetti on top of the ruined gift. My graduation cards and notes torn into what seemed like thousands of pieces and scattered all over my room. I remember falling to my knees, completely numb. I couldn't even cry. I just held onto my rose and tried to breathe. It's doubly sad to remember this now, as my grandmother recently passed away, and I would have loved to have had that Bible. I knew immediately who had done this. My aunt. She was such an entitled parent that no one can have any type of spotlight unless it was her own kids or herself. If her daughter couldn't celebrate a graduation, then neither could I. If her daughter didn't get a check, then I couldn't have mine. I was glad I had decided to wear my grandparents' necklace because who knows what she would have done with it. All this destruction and my parents were either oblivious or they just didn't care. This was more or less the beginning of the end for our parent-daughter relationship. I was 18, a legal adult, and able to make my own decisions about my own life. With how things were now, I knew my parents couldn't be a part of it if they were determined to listen to the vitriol that spewed from my aunt's mouth. Aftermath. Within 2 hours, I was over at my best friend's house to spend the next few weeks. Within a couple of months, I had gotten a job and moved into my own place. I never looked back. After several years, I was, and still am, married to an amazing guy. Only one marriage for me, thank you very much. Unlike you, Auntie. He encouraged me to enroll in college and work towards my bachelor's degree and then earn my master's degree. That led to my current amazing career, with some of the best coworkers imaginable, in my chosen field with a more than acceptable salary. Over time, I slowly, very slowly, began to grow a little bit closer to my parents. It's not your typical parent-child relationship anymore. That ended forever when I was 18. But it's cordial. In the beginning, after I moved out, they tried to do little things for me, and later my new husband as well, but their offers were usually declined, preferring to forge our own way without relying on others for help. Eventually, I began to relax around them a bit more and to open up my heart again. We talked a lot over the years, and they actually eventually apologized for what happened. I guess they initially thought that they were keeping the peace, and they just went along with whatever my aunt said. They trusted her, as an adult, over me. Eventually, they began to agree with her opinions, and that they never sought to question what she told them about me. At one point, my mom even said that she wondered if I was on drugs during this time based on the story my aunt was telling her. The irony, now more than a decade and a half later, my relationship with my mom and dad is pretty great. Less than parent-child, but way more than friends. My aunt ended up moving out of my parents' house and into a nearby trashy apartment not long after my graduation, citing an unpleasant atmosphere as her reasoning. Yeah, I wonder why. My folks paid her rent, utilities, paid for a car, including gas and insurance, and bought her groceries for a couple of years before my dad finally grew a pair and put his foot down. She started dating a lazy idiot guy who received some kind of government pension, and once he moved in with her, that's how they more or less supported themselves. She still occasionally comes crawling to my mom for money for smokes, gas, or whatever. My dad at best gives her a hard no, and at worst tells her exactly what he thought about her, so she knows not to go near him asking for anything. Sometimes Mom gives her a few dollars, but usually not, as even Mom has grown tired of my aunt's antics. Entitlement and poisonous attitude. So my aunt and her boy toy survive on a cycle of small monthly government pension, payday loans, and begging the family for money. So of course neither of them have a job due to their disabilities. Interesting side note, after my aunt moved into her apartment, she no longer needed a wheelchair. It's a miracle. Sorry, hiccup. Or most likely she couldn't use it because her new place was tiny on the second floor and wasn't an ADA home because she couldn't qualify for one, considering she, gasp, wasn't medically considered disabled. It was just a regular rundown one-bedroom, one-bath apartment, and all she, and with my parents' support at the time, could afford. Oh, and also she had to stop seeing her quack doctor as my parents eventually stopped paying that bill too. I guess it's a win-win for physical health as she got more exercise, lost some of the weight she had piled on while living with us, and was forced off her prescriptions as she no longer had a willing doctor to prescribe them. I'm sure the withdrawal was hell, but I have zero sympathy. She's still a leech who cannot stand to hear about anyone's happiness or success. She was placing bets on my wedding day, how long my marriage would last, and always manages to work her aches and pains, dire situation, and dubious achievements of her kids, who both have criminal records, stints in drug and alcohol rehab programs, several divorces between them, and children outside of marriage, into any conversation she has with anyone. A leopard cannot change its spots. So yeah, the best revenge I can imagine is my dear Aunt stewing every single day across all these years in the knowledge that I have no criminal record, no drug charges, a happy marriage, no divorces, 2 degrees, a successful career, money in the bank, a very good relationship with my parents. She has to endure my folks bragging to the whole family about my and my husband's successful life and accomplishments in my job, all without any assistance from anyone. Typical parent behavior, as my other cousins' parents all justifiably do the same for their kids. All my aunt can contribute is that cousin 1 managed to be paroled, and now she has a steady minimum wage job. Don't hear much of anything about cousin 2, as he's literally a deadbeat. I guess in a way she pushed me to work towards the best life I could possibly have, so thanks, Auntie. Preemptive answers to questions I might be asked. 1. Yes, I totally realize that some people have a string of rotten luck which forces their hand to reach out for help. If you are able, you should definitely feel comfortable enough to reach out a hand to family for assistance. I call BS on my aunt's story of hardship because she never showed any gratitude to my folks, and to this day I hear that she still insists that I was the troublemaker she said I was. She never tried to look for employment, nor never did anything to get back on her feet, and spent all day, every day, on her rear end. For this, yes. Because of all the people like your aunt that are in my family, my sister and I feel absolutely fucking awful and horrendous about asking anyone in our family for help, because they're too busy taking care of the other people's shit. It's fucked up, but true. 2. I don't care if people have kids outside of a traditional family environment. In many cases, one or both parents don't find the need for it and still manage to have a wonderful family. What I object to is a bum, alcoholic, or drug addict bringing children into this world without having a stable home life and the necessary resources to raise them properly, with morals and manners and such. I know tons of single moms and dads who are superstar parents with great kids. Shout out to all of the awesome single parents. Y'all are all an inspiration. 3. Yeah, this might seem like either a dumb story or completely fake to some folks, but I assure you it happened. Some parts might be boring, but as I said in the beginning, I don't see the point in adding embellishments to make anything more interesting. It was a crappy situation, but I guess it's important to remember that the truth can be stranger than fiction. I can't. The font's a bit small on my screen. I forgot to readjust everything so that it was bigger for me to read from my distance. If you actually got this far, you are a seriously awesome trooper and deserve a gold star. Thanks for reading. I hope you had a blessed Christmas, and here's hoping we all have a happy and safe New Year's. P.S. I know there are channels on YouTube who read crazy Reddit stories. If there is anyone who is interested and wants to read this for a video, feel free to do so. Just send me the link when you do. It might take an entire video to get through it all, so no worries if you'd rather give this one a pass. And there's more. But hi, yes, I am one of those people who did indeed read this. Edit. I received a few messages with questions, so I'll post the answers here. No, I have no idea how my aunt played the system. After later talking to my folks, I learned that her doctor didn't practice in a hospital, but instead had some sort of private practice in his home. We lived in a rather rural area, and going to a real city hospital was difficult for some people. I'm basically no doctor or lawyer, so I don't know the legality of any of it. But I'm pretty sure he fudged some things in order for him to get a paycheck, like not accepting insurance, taking only cash, and being liberal with prescriptions and the like. Small town politics are what kept him in the business, I guess. No, my aunt never tried filing for actual disability or anything official through the government. She was crazy enough to get a wheelchair and call herself disabled, but thankfully not crazy enough to try to fool Uncle Sam. After a few weeks, my grandparents did actually inquire about why I hadn't cashed or deposited their check. Still being a bit of a doormat, I made up an excuse about the check being damaged and the bank couldn't accept it. They sent me a new check to my best friend's address where I was staying at the time, which I used to buy my first car. They didn't question me directly as to why I didn't want it sent to my parents' house, but I'm pretty sure they knew that there were some issues. I never told my grandparents about the Bible. My grandma was very religious, and I think the knowledge of one of her daughters actually burning a Bible would have hurt her too much. And that is the end of it. Honestly, I feel like OP definitely should have told her grandparents about what her aunt had did, especially with the Bible, because that's completely fucked up, and the aunt needed to be told on. But I get it. The OP was a fresh, brand new adult, 18. They were a doormat, as they said, so they were shy. They probably didn't want to cause too many waves. I do think it's completely and totally fucked up that their parents essentially listened and believed what the aunt was saying simply because she was an adult over their child who they had known and raised for like 18 years. Like, the fuck? Like, you know your kid better than this woman who just started hanging around at your house. And also, I'm kind of concerned that, like, your mom, I don't know if her sister, like, the aunt is older or younger than your mom, but I'm concerned that your mom is just, like, following her sister, listening to her and doing all this and that. Like, I get it, it's family. I am in the process of cutting off a lot of family, so I don't give a fuck about most of them. Because I'm just like, they keep hurting me, and I cannot deal with that anymore. But it's just completely and totally messed up that your parents completely allowed that. I'm happy that y'all have worked over the past couple of years since this incident happened to somewhat mend that relationship that y'all did have. And that even though it's not the parent-child relationship, it's a cordial relationship at the very least. I'm sure they feel a lot of regret about it. And yeah, your aunt sucks. But thank you for these stories. If you ever post more, I would love to read them. So yeah. So we're at, holy cruds, almost 50 minutes. Everyone, leave a comment letting me know what other kind of things you would like me to read in the future. Leave a like if you want me to make more, all that good stuff. So yeah, have a lovely day. Thank you all for being here. Bye bye.